For some reason, throughout the world, the Jews are vilified and treated in rather poor manner. It seems that they are blamed for many things, and throughout history they have been. Even now we have anti-Semitism. And as I've explained on another video clip, what is a Semite? Semites are actually sons of Shem, which is Abraham was a son of Shem, several generations down, who was the son of Noah as well. And both Arabs and Jews are Semites because Abraham married his wife, and he also, because he didn't have a child, his handmaid Hagar, who was an Egyptian, and had a child Ishmael from her, and then later, by miraculous means, or though not as a miraculous conception, but they were 100, Abraham and his wife Sarah. They gave birth to Isaac. So first there was Ishmael, and then there was Isaac. And both Abraham and Sarah were Syrian, and Hagar was Egyptian. But they're both Semites. But obviously Ishmael has the Egyptian heritage in him as well. And I believe it's known that all the Arabic nations come from Hagar's and Ishmael's descendants, and the Jews came from the descendants of Isaac, who both Abraham and Sarah were Syrian heritage, and Isaac also married a Syrian woman, and obviously they had the 12 tribes of Israel, of which only the Jews are basically left now, and with Hagar and Ishmael, there were 12 tribes from him as well, and God promised that they would be made 12 princes, and they would be he would bless that nation as well. So Ishmael's children of many years down, of many generations in all the Arabic states, God did say, according to the Bible, if we believe in the Bible, that God would bless them as well as Isaac's children, and they're both Semites. So if you go onto a certain battle.com, you'll see on the baseline story page there the very condensed story of how all this happened. If you read a certain myth.com, you will see the general message and of what God seems to have said in conjunction with what the Quran says as well, and the various discrepancies that are in all these books, and the discrepancies within the teachings, both in the Jewish, the Christian, and the Muslim teaching. And it's a very quick overview, but I have read both books, the Bible and the Quran, and the Bible obviously includes the Torah, which is we call the Old Testament, the Torah and the other Jewish writings of the other prophets, of which are about 20. And as I've mentioned before, the Quran does refer us back to the writings from before time, the scriptures from before time, to read them, and it does tell us to honour all the prophets, which means we should be reading all of the prophets, which means we should be reading the Bible, which contains all the Jewish prophets as well, and we can read the Quran as well, because then we have a full picture of what everybody is saying. And a certain myth gives you a very quick, broad outline with that, and a certain battle website will give you certain scriptures of the Quran and the Bible and the Torah that you can look at, and a general overview of different things. But if we come back to Abraham and the Jews, so then we have the Jews that were established in Jerusalem, and over time it was the case that Jesus Christ came as the Messiah. The Quran, Muslims believe that Jesus is the Messiah. Christians believe that Jesus is the Messiah, meaning anointed one. The Jews don't believe that. They believe there's another one to come. But in Daniel 9, there was a prophecy there which gives in a rather mysterious way, but I've tried to explain it in a certain myth, that the Messiah would come around the century that Jesus Christ came. So this Messiah, if he was to come, had to come at the time Jesus came, or there isn't one to come now. Now, Jesus Christ said, he prophesied or predicted, he said in Luke 21, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that the desolation thereof is near, or the destruction thereof is near. For these are the days of vengeance, that all things that are written may be fulfilled. And they, the Jews, shall fall by the edge of the sword, and led captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down by the Gentiles. Well, Gentiles are not anybody that's not a Jew, until the time of the Gentiles is fulfilled. Now, it's a case that in 70 AD, 70 years after Christ was born, and about 40 years after he died, I think, the temple of the Jews, where they issued all their sacrifices, etc., was and Jerusalem was surrounded by armies, and it was destroyed, and the temple was destroyed, so therefore the sacrifice ceased as well, and they were carried off captive to Rome, and they were dispersed throughout all the nations of the world until 1947, really, and even many are in other nations still. But during those years, before in 1947, Israel was allowed to be established as a nation so that the Jews could return there following the Holocaust, because throughout the centuries, you know, in the Inquisition by the Spanish and various other times, they would settle in an area or country, and then everybody would start turning against them, and then they'd have to move on because they'd be killed and that sort of thing. The final issue being the Holocaust in Germany by Hitler, who thought he wanted to eradicate them all. Now, I, as a Christian, used to think, well, maybe this is what the part of the prediction of what God had predicted for the Jews, that because of disobedience of centuries and millennia ago, they were reaping the rewards of their disobedience. And so this is how we are fixed in our minds when we just bury ourselves either in the Bible or in the Quran. We apply that to our life, even when the people are being so badly affected. Now, it's a case now that if we really lift our heads out of these books for a moment, because we don't know for a fact that they're true, because even the Bible, Christ says, if you abide in me and my words abide in you, you shall ask what you will, and it shall be done unto you. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Continue in my love. If you keep my commandments, you shall abide in my love, even as I've kept my Father's commandment, and abide in his love. This is my commandment, that you love one another, even as I have loved you. Now he says here, if you abide in me, and my words abide in you, you shall ask what you will, and it shall be done unto you. So, I was a Christian, I'm 60 now, and for many years, you know, I was trying to follow the gospel, and you know, not doing anything very bad. I'm not perfect, obviously, but you know, I came to a point where I was not well, quite seriously not well, was in the ITU for a few times, and I, you know, believed that I would be healed, and I did all sorts of things for my healing, and to try and be healed, I'd go to just turn up at a major evangelical church, and I'd have a tube in my nose and could hardly walk really, and asked them to pray for me because nobody was there, and even the receptionist was in tears on my behalf and praying for me. And then I went later and somebody else prayed for me. This is an evangelical, well-known evangelical church. I had people anoint me with oil. I went to different churches to anoint me with oil, and nothing happened. And all that saved me was medical drugs and an operation, and even now, eventually I had to go onto a drug that I didn't particularly want to, but it's keeping my condition under control. So I haven't been healed even now. It's only the medicine that has brought me to the state where I'm functioning and can live life reasonably well. So what happened to the words of God there? So this challenged my faith quite dramatically. And I would say to all Muslims that, particularly those that are going out to destroy themselves, believing what the Quran is saying, these are only words in a book, very ancient words. The Quran is really supporting the Bible and all that it's saying, and but whether it's the Quran or the Bible, they're words. Now, there was no reason why I shouldn't have been healed if these words were true. Now, I think there might be a case that we are not preaching the gospel as it's meant to be, that because we were preaching about the Trinity and that Jesus is the God as well as being the Son of God. And perhaps as time goes by, I may be healed if we've. But I say to Muslims and Jews that we need to read all of the Bible, including the Gospels and the Quran, so that everybody has a full understanding of what this message of God is, and also understand what the Jews stand for, how they originated, and what they have suffered over the centuries, because it's the case that God gave them the land of Israel for them to have forever, and this is why the Jews were allowed to return there in 1947, because they were taken by force by the Romans in the year 70 AD, 2,000 years ago. So although the Palestinians are saying, well, this land is ours, obviously the Muslims are believing that the Quran is true and that the Christ is the Messiah, but they say that there's a Torah that has not been changed. So they're saying that the Torah we do have, meaning the Old Testament in the Bible, is not the true one, so they change it. But they don't bring out this new Torah to show us, what it's saying. They're saying, well, it's been lost, presumably. So some Muslims don't read the Bible. But the thing is, this message that goes out that there's another Torah that has not been changed is just something that leaders, an ordinary man has said. It's, we're being misled by what men are saying. So if we were taking the Bible and the Quran as being the inspired message of God, not the Hadiths, because they were not spoken when the Prophet was under the inspiration of God, then we would be able to realize that the Sharia law is not part of the message of God, and also that we need to read and know the Bible as well, and the Jews also need to know the Gospels as well. And I mean well, because it takes years for this to be known, which is why I've tried to condense what I believe is the real one true message of God, taking into account everybody's viewpoint, is what I believe the one true message of God is, and I believe there should be miracles coming from that. So again, we have the Palestinians believing one thing and discarding what the Torah and the Bible is saying, because they're listening to what people, their leaders are saying, but the leaders are not the prophets. So we have to go back. If you're going to believe in the Bible and the Quran, you've got to really read what the books say. Otherwise, we will continue to have all these divisions in the world, and they're very unnecessary, because we're divided because we all have a different section of the different sections of the Bible or the Quran, and we're all wrong. I think this book might be the nearest to the one true message of God, because, as I say, it's taking into everybody's viewpoint all the different reasons why they're saying this thing or another thing, and the issue with the land of Israel, which the Arabs want to destroy, I believe. They don't acknowledge that the Jews have a right to exist, and I don't know why. Well, I don't even know why it is in the even in the Quran. It says, "Do not befriend Jews and Christians." Well, the Quran also says, "Read the scriptures from aforetime and honor all the prophets," which means not only the prophet of the Quran, but the prophets in the Bible as well. So this is the key issue to resolving anti-Semitism, which is relevant to the Jews. But as I say, both Arabs and Jews are Semites. And the fact of the matter is that if we knew all of the Bible and the Quran, which I have read, and I've, as I say, put the overall message, the cream of the message, which comes from the milk of these two books, sorry, not the milk of the Bible and the Quran, which I haven't got here at the moment. When you know all of those books, then you get the cream of the message, which is in here. This is free to read and download online. It can be read in 1 to 3 hours. But there's a section, the main section, which is the message, I think is a brief message, which takes now and then to get all the different discrepancies and other issues. It would take about 3 hours. And I will improve it and improve the diagrams in due course. It's not perfect, I realise that. But if we're ever going to have peace in Jerusalem and in Israel, and we're ever going to stop this division in Israel, we have to know both books, and we have to know the origins of why we're believing in certain things clearly, which, as I say, if you go into a certain battle.com in the baseline story section there, you'll get an overview of it, and there are parts of the Quran in there as well. And we have to remember that when the media as well, when they come out speaking against when there's been wars in Israel and the Jews have attacked Gaza, you have to remember that even now, while it's supposedly in peace, they are having tunnels are being made, bombs are being sent over the border. The wall only went up there because there were frequent suicide bombers that would go onto buses and then they would blow themselves up, buses of children. And although the Palestinians haven't got a great amount of weapons, thank goodness, and the money they do have, instead of trying to help their community to improve themselves and have a better life, they spend it on weapons and sending rockets over to Israel. So how can Israel even try to agree peace when this is going on? If I'm in England and I've got somebody sending rockets over to London every now and again, I would be wanting my government to be doing something. So when you have there are certain TV stations with certain TV presenters supporting very much the Palestinian issue, yes, there needs to be something done. For I understand that the Jews are keep building on the Palestinian land, or what they feel is their land, and obviously some agreement about by that. But there's no point keep sending rockets out or acting out war, because that will bring war. But they're making a judgment, not fully balancing both the issues, that even while this peace, as I say, is going on in Israel, it's not really peace because they're having bombs and rockets sent over to them all the time, but we don't hear about it in the West. When we hear about it is when Israel has finally decided to attack Palestine in order to try and stop it. I realise it's over the top sometimes, but the thing is, if you keep if they know that the tunnels are being built all the time, and that rockets are going to continue to come, and that supplies are coming either via Egypt or some other place via the sea, then something has to be done before something worse is sent over. And they have Hamas there as well, which in other nations is viewed as a terrorist group. And now we have the United Nations acknowledging that the Palestinians are a nation in their own right. So what is to be done? The only thing we can do is to establish what the one true message of God is, which I believe is in here, and from which miracles should come. And if the miracles are not coming from what we have at the moment, then we haven't got the message of God anyway. And if there is only one God, there should only be one message. So all Christians, Jews and Muslims need to read the Bible and the Quran and to know it well, and for their children to know it, and they can quickly know it through this. And we need to have an aim that all the world realizes the history of both the Muslims and the Jews and the Christians, so that the divisions, some of the major divisions of the world, come to an end, both nationally and internationally. So I appeal to all these people who believe in a loving God, a peaceful God, to know your book. And as I say, it takes a long time to know these books. So read this, which is free, as I say, to download online, free to read online. It takes 1 to 3 hours, and you'll get the general basis idea. And then if you still want to read the Bible and the Quran, you can, but you must read it quickly in the space of 2 or 3 weeks or a couple of months, from front to back, not taking little pieces out here and there, because that is where the trouble lies. And as I say, if there is only one God, there should only be one message, and most of us have parts of that message, and we need the whole message, and then we might have the miracles that Christ said would come when we love one another even as he loved us. And then whatever we ask for in prayer believing, we might receive. And in addition to this, it's a case that in Joel 2, it speaks of the end days and the day of the Lord, and day of darkness and gloom and clouds and thick darkness. And there's going to be great trouble. And both the Muslims and the Jews, I think, and the Christians are waiting for this great battle, this great Armageddon. And I would say to you that this isn't necessary. We're believing in these books, and we may actually, the Bible and the Quran, and we may actually bringing this great trauma upon ourselves because we all believe that something's going to happen, or waiting for it, as I used to. Now, since I've started to doubt a little that maybe these books may be just words, I'm not 100% sure yet, but I certainly realize that we are in control of what happens. The believers are, when you know the full gospel, the full word of God. And although there is this day of the Lord that is predicted and prophesied, it also says this: the Lord executes his word, for the day of the Lord is very terrible, and who can abide it? And then he says, therefore also now, says the Lord, turn you even to me with all your heart, and with fasting, and with weeping, and with mourning, and rend your heart, and not your garments, and turn unto the Lord your God, for he is gracious and slow to anger, and of great kindness, and repents, which means to turn from, him of the evil. And who knows if he will turn and repent and leave a blessing behind him? Now, I just say to Christians and Muslims and Jews as well, in John 15, it says, if you abide in me and my words abide in you, you shall ask what you will, and it shall be done unto you. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Continue in my love. If you keep my commandments, you should abide in my love, even as I've kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. And he also says, it also says elsewhere in the New Testament, that love is the fulfilling of the law. So, meaning love is the fulfilling of all religious laws. So there's no circumcision or special dress or special diet, special days of worship. Love is the fulfilling of the law. Christ is saying here, if we believe in him and follow in him, whatever we ask, he will give us. So if we ask that there is no battle, if we order ourselves so that we live in peace, that we begin to rule ourselves in a manner that, yes, maybe the rich give into a fund, and the poorer, the middle rich give into the fund, and we put our foreign aid into a fund, and that's distributed to all the people throughout the world, so that everybody has something. And if we remove the divisions of like Saudi Arabia and Iran and India and Pakistan, that some are Muslim, some are Sunni, some are Shia, some are Hindu, Baptist, Buddhist. But we could begin at least with the Jews, Christians, and Muslims, that we remove those divisions, because we're the ones that are causing the trouble in the world at the moment. And then we might begin to see and order ourselves so that, if Christ is coming, if there is such a thing as Messiah, and there is truth in these books, and that the Messiah and Christ is coming, which the Muslims agree as well as the Christians, then let us prepare ourselves, let us order ourselves, let us begin to live in peace. Let us begin to distribute amongst from the rich to the poor. But the poor also have to play their part as well, because you can't have people saying they're poor and taking from the benefit system, and then they have 2 or 3 dogs, 2 or 3 children, smoke and drink and have alcohol, and then say they're poor. Now, that's not fair to the rich either, or those hard-working people who are working, paying the taxes. And then you have people like that abusing the system. And so we need to educate these people, train their children, educate their children into, what is the correct way of living, because many of these children are not. Because their parents are in disorder, their children are going to be in disorder. So we need to take a hold of this early on in their life. And as I think some people have said, if you take a child when they're 7, you show him what he will be like as a man. So we need to take the children early on to teach them better morality, better sense of responsibility, so that they begin to take hold of their future as young people, all of them, and realize that they're in control as well. And it's up to them to prepare themselves for the world that they want to live in. And if we have running alongside that, a true, better understanding of these books, the Bible and the Quran, along the lines of a certain myth.com, or is it true, then we will be making progress. And as I say, if there is only one God, there should only be one message of God. And that is in this book, which is free online to read and download, or you can buy it. But I'm not aiming to make a lot of money from it. Just go on to it and download it free. It's there for the purpose, I hope, of establishing what the one true message of God is, and bringing peace and common sense to the world at last.